Good morning, everybody. We have made it to NFL Draft Day 1, Thursday, April 24th. Appreciate everybody who has been on these shows, on these live streams, listening on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify for the last 3 weeks as we have gone through the draft process. Hopefully kept everybody up to date with all of the odds movement, everything going on. It has been a interesting turn of events, as in the last 24 hours, after 3 weeks of consensus in the top 7, there is now a new consensus top 7, and the original consensus that was there for 3 weeks, everybody just seems content to switch over and now agree into the new top 7 consensus, which we'll talk about in a second. But it is curious to me how we've taken that entire turn, and we're now kind of back at a very similar point to where we were at this time last week, just with a couple different names and faces inside the top 7. Interesting draft process. I think from the other pros that I have talked to, it's probably one of the lower volume drafts that I've seen in the last couple of years, just because there has been so much uncertainty. And typically, I would say that leads to a lot of betting opportunities, but just some of the availability for some specific players maybe wasn't there with the positional totals to act on. And it's really been kind of in those 5 to 8 range where we've seen a lot of movement, a lot of disagreement, and a lot of change. So we'll update everybody with what is going on. We'll look at some final, I would say, longer shot flyers that you could tread very lightly on, but I think line up now with some bigger numbers, and then we'll wrap everything up heading into the draft. Brandon Shoemaker says, what am I going to do with myself after this week? Well, tomorrow there will be a draft recap, the winners, the losers of day 1. And then next week, there will be a look at mostly day 2 and 3. I'm not going to go too far beyond that, maybe a player or two, some more winners and losers, and then we'll get back into maybe a slightly reduced schedule for the live streams and shows, but a lot of team preview content. The schedule release is probably 3 weeks away, so we'll have a lot of schedule analysis, strength of schedule, projections, win totals, team previews, lots to get into. So there's never any shortage of things to talk about when it comes to the NFL. Very much looking forward to getting over the draft hump, to get into some preview talk, and look forward to things as well. John Coleman says, Adam, one of my friends who works for the Colts say they will draft Loveland at 14, even if Tyler Warren is still available as well. They prefer Loveland, but he also says neither will be there at 14. If Loveland goes before 19.5, John, I'm a very happy man, but the Colts number on the tight end is now out to minus 140. I think that's a little bit rich either way. We've talked about just everything that Steichen has said over and over and over about wanting a tight end. But as you mentioned, what makes that an interesting price is if both of those guys are touted to go a little bit earlier, there's not really a third guy until Mason Taylor, which I think goes to the Eagles at the end of the first round. So do what you will with that price, but that's an interesting comment for sure. Taylor says, do you think Will Johnson falls out of the first round with the injury concerns? Additionally, is Barron a lock to be the first cornerback taken after Hunter? I don't think I agree with either of those, Taylor. I know that that's kind of the tone that it's taking on. I don't personally agree with either of those. There's been far more commentary and far more concrete mentions of Barron being a guy that goes between 20 and 30 than there have been Johnson falling out of the first round. So that's just how I look at it at the moment. So no, I wouldn't say he's a lock to be the first corner after Hunter. I'm going to pull up a window. Let's just quickly go through the updates for those who have not seen it yet, for both what we saw come out last night from Daniel Jeremiah, as well as what we saw come out this morning from Dane Brugler in their final mocks. I'll go through these quickly, and we'll just kind of look at some consensus points for each of these. For those of you who may be antsy to jump in the comment and say this is entirely priced in, you're right. The vast majority of it is, but there's a lot of folks who may have not seen either of these, and this is just an intention to catch them up and explain what's going on and why we've seen some of these prices move. So as I talked about, as we see the consensus in the top 7, Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell. That's been the consensus top 4 for the better part of 2 weeks. Nothing changing here. Would be very surprised between now and these picks going if anything changes in the top 4. Part of the new consensus that is emerging is Ashton Genty at number 5. Not only DJ and Brugler have him there, but almost every recent mock that I have seen go up in the last 24 hours has now bumped Genty up to number 5 with Jacksonville. His price to go to the Jags is now over minus 230 and continuing to trend up. Lots of connections now to Genty going number 5 to Jacksonville. The big surprise in the top 7 consensus, it was not a surprise that he was going to go before 13.5. Kelvin Banks on the other side of Miami with that O-line need, Chicago, San Francisco, the Jets to an extent. Banks under has been betting under for the last week and a half. It's been pretty steady. Now he's jumped into number 6. And so this was the big surprise yesterday with Banks being the guy who really shot up. Genty moving from 6 to 5, pretty believable. Seeing Banks jump up to 6 was probably the more surprising top consensus shift of anything that I saw yesterday. And his price to go inside the top 10 has ballooned. His price to go under 13.5 has gone as high as minus 700. Some places have adjusted his total to 7.5. And so huge rise for Kelvin Banks in the last 24 hours. What I have agreed with entirely and all along is Armand Membou, number 7 to the New York Jets. And as we look through both Brugler and through what we're seeing from Daniel Jeremiah, Membou settling back in at 7 to the Jets makes just a world of sense to me, fixing the right tackle spots. Aaron Glenn talking about how he wants this offseason to be quiet by design. I think that makes a ton of sense. There's a lot of speculation that Membou could go to the Raiders, and that was kind of how last week ended and this week early on started. But as broken down in this explanation, having Banks at left tackle and Membou, who's a college right tackle his entire career, between those two teams, the fits are just a lot better. So I completely agree with Membou at 7 and have the entirety. Now, Mason Graham at number 8 to the Carolina Panthers. The same write-up for DJ that he had in his first mock draft with the Carolina Panthers failing to get Milton Williams. Now they get Mason Graham to fill that spot. Michael Williams, number 9 to the Saints. And then Tyler Warren, number 10 to the Chicago Bears. Top 7 with Membou, Banks, Genty, Campbell, Carter, Hunter, and Ward completely lines up almost across the board now. You're not seeing a lot of mocks that have any difference in those two. And then you get to 10, and that's where things kind of go off the rails and start to look a lot different. Tyler Warren now becoming a pretty strong consensus at number 10 to go to the Chicago Bears. That was something that was very common early in the process. Now that's changed to kind of come back. There was speculation that the Bears could go a couple different ways. It doesn't seem like the ask that's being reported this morning for the Bears to move up to 5 with Jacksonville and switch is going to be worthwhile of Chicago doing. We'll see if that happens later on in the day. There's been some rumors about that, but that is how things are looking right now with the Bears at 10. So that's really become for sure the top 7 this morning. A little bit of a reversal from what we've seen the last couple of weeks in those final few picks. And the prices in the market certainly all reflecting that. Now, as I go down the board and start to look at what stands out, Jeremiah had Loveland to the Broncos in a trade up. And as you mentioned a little bit earlier, John, with your comment, you were saying that both of these tight ends could go before 14, where the Colts are. Tyler Warren at 10, Loveland at 13, perhaps Denver jumping in front of Indy, knowing that they're tied so strongly to a tight end to get that. Interesting direction. Broncos very much rumored to be trading for a running back. That doesn't seem to be materializing. Further down the board as we go, another standout, Emeka Egbuka, 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. I'm looking to see where Brugler had him this morning. He had Golden going 18 to Seattle, which we'll touch on in a second. I don't even know if he had Egbuka going in the first round. And so a bit of a difference of opinion in those two as you're looking to see where he goes. I saw Adam Levitan from ETR talking about Egbuka, wide receiver number 2 off of the board, citing that his floor may be viewed higher than Matthew Golden. If you're buying into Daniel Jeremiah's mock, then you would certainly agree with that, as the Buccaneers 19 are slated to get Golden. From a betting perspective, you could find that Egbuka number 2 around 4 to 1. That's come in a little bit this morning. Another guy that's jumped up and taken a big shift, Malachi Starks, going number 20 to the Miami Dolphins in the latest mock from Jeremiah. I'm looking to see Starks all the way down at 30 to the Buffalo Bills in Dane Brugler's. A lot of the commentary around Starks in the last day really reflects what came from those coach or scouting reports episodes that we did last week, where it was just everybody was saying nice things about Starks and great things and glowing character and everything standing out. And so to see that shift in the market's interesting. When the positional totals were initially posted with him and Amand Warry was the safety that was being bet up and Starks was falling. Now today, I see Starks as high as minus 160 to be the first safety going off of the board. And so this is the highest I think I've seen Starks at 20. There was some speculation at 13, but that seems very high for him. I think in the trade scenario where the Dolphins were to bounce back, that would make a lot more sense with him going at 20. Shedeur Sanders at pick 21 is now becoming the norm in the majority of the mocks that I'm looking at and respect. Brugler went with Derek Harmon. He's been kind of steady there with the Steelers going defensive line, so a slight difference of opinion between those two, but I've seen a ton of Sanders 21 to the Steelers. Other things that stand out would be Houston going with an offensive lineman, Simmons or Tyler Booker. Now, Tyler Booker was a guy I definitely regret taking out of the mock perhaps yesterday. Think that he is going to be a first rounder. I was talking with Connor Allen, and now that it's posted, I think it's fair to say if he wants to send me a DM and get angry with me, that's all right. I don't think I'm sharing anything off the record or anything crazy. Over at Profit X, there's been a ton of money put into trying to get filled for Booker to go top 10, and that's still kind of pending in the market. Nobody's gone and taken that yet. So an interesting stance being taken there. I've talked about like Polymarket, haven't seen a lot from Kalshi and some of these other exchanges where you tend to see awards and draft stuff get bet late and have some interesting takes. Polymarket's been, I would say, pretty quiet and not too much to take away there. But that note from him I thought was really smart and definitely stood out. And so depending how you think about Tyler Booker, that could be an interesting one to watch in that market specifically to see if there's any changes in that or if that opinion ends up getting filled. But that is a notable one as you go down. It's only about 13K so far matched in that top 10 market. But then you just have this big block pending for Booker trying to get filled to go top 10. So make of that what you will. But that certainly stood out. Rams running back, Omarion Hampton. This price has come in quite a bit, was extremely high and has now been slashed. Daniel Jeremiah drove that with Omarion Hampton going 26 to the Rams. And then later on, further down the board, nothing really different, nothing really substantial standing out from either of these final few picks in either mock draft. Really, it ends basically as has been expected for the last couple of weeks. So certainly a few guys in those stood out. Again, the big takeaway for me is we had this strong consensus for 3 weeks. Monday, Tuesday this week, it was thrown up in the air. And now we're right back to a strong consensus inside the top 7. And if there's any opportunity, I think, between now and the start of the draft where you're looking in this top half of the market, trying to find something that stands out, you're probably looking to see one or two things you might disagree with in that top 10. But it's very difficult to see right now as we sit about, 8 hours away from draft start time. There's just not a lot out there at the moment that I see in this top chunk to take advantage of. One other one that I'll say, Jackson Dart in a trade by the New York Giants coming up later in the first round was something that we're seeing a lot of talk about. It appeared in both of those mocks, just at different numbers. There was an Instagram post from Joe Shane's son that was talking about Jackson Dart in his Instagram story and like posting a highlight reel. If that's not real or like indicative of something, then it's one of the better and probably more intense smoke screens that's ever been thrown out at the draft. Make of that what you will. interesting to see that rise as a story and a bit of a different direction to go, but that certainly seems to be the case. What's interesting in a case like the Daniel Jeremiah mock is he has Dart going ahead of Shedeur Sanders. Dart's going 18 in that trade with Seattle. Sanders is going 21. So that's quite a change and quite a difference from how the order was initially thought. Dart was aligned with New Orleans, but that's now a bit of a change with him being aligned to the New York Giants. So a bit of an interesting curve thrown out there as well. Vince Vegas says Genty will go number 5. AKA Odie says the draft gets interesting at 7. Will Jets go Warren, OT, or D-line? People are projecting Glenn's public comments as an indication it won't be Warren. Honestly, it feels the exact same as last year, where the question was, will the Jets go O-line or will they go Brock Bowers? And I think it's the same way this year, where the Jets go offensive line. Getting Membu at right tackle, you never know what he turns out as a prospect, solves the offensive line issues that the Jets have had forever. Yesterday on the show, I was talking about a team like Houston, a team like Kansas City, to an extent, a team like Miami. Lots of these teams that are tied to offensive linemen and have pretty strong prices on them. Like adding one offensive lineman to Houston isn't going to solve that problem. It's going to solve a problem at one position, but they still have a ton of question marks on the O-line. For the Jets to get Membu, like that's by far the biggest question and brings that offensive line to a very serviceable level. And so they're, to me, one piece away on the O-line to have a very functional unit up front. Whereas I don't get that same feeling with some of these other O-line needy teams. Putting a tight end in an offense like the Jets have probably doesn't raise that floor much higher like a solid offensive line could with how run dependent they're going to be with Justin Fields as quarterback. And so I just think it's very similar to last year where they prioritized O-line over the tight end. And I think that's the direction they go again, which is why I've really been strong on Membu going there since really we started doing these shows a couple weeks ago. Couple different kind of long shots you might want to consider as we go between now and the end of the show, just to wrap up, is there's not a whole lot more that can really be said at this point. I'm going to have updates in the Football Bettors Telegram the rest of the day. It is free to join. You get the updates sent to your phone down below in the description of this YouTube video. You can find the link. It'll take you into the app. It'll get you into the channel. Any final news, any final rumors, anything that you want to keep an eye on, those will be posted inside that channel. And so it's basically just going to be an extension of this video if you would like to join it. Also check out footballbettors.com, the free email newsletter for any updates between now and tomorrow on the draft and recaps of what happened in the draft with reactions to winners and losers, which we'll talk about tomorrow as well. So a couple different angles that you might want to look at. The first one, Seattle to draft Jalen Milroe is at 16-1. Now, this is not to do it with their first pick. This is to do it at any time during the draft. Some of the commentary that stood out to me in all the coaching, the GM stuff, that was never really actionable just because of who was posted and what was available, was John Schneider from Seattle on local Seattle radio, which I've kind of become a bit of a fan of because of all the Mike McDonald stuff. He's had a lot of just colorful commentary about like downplaying, not downplaying, but trying to kind of go against all the people who are saying that this is a bad quarterback class. And he's been talking the quarterback class up. And so I think it's worth a shot as we see that come through. It's just, he's been just kind of picky at it. And it hasn't been like prompted questions. It's just been weird listening to it, and it's like, that's a comment that doesn't make a lot of sense for the context. And it's always been him kind of hyping up quarterbacks in this class. So I don't think they go round 1 and do anything at the quarterback position. But I do think there's a chance that they end up taking him. And that's one way that I see that commentary from him can be bet on. So that's something that, again, these are all very long shot flyers to take a chance on. Milroe 16-1 to be drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles to draft a tight end in the first round or with their first pick is 6-1. I'm buying into those videos that posted where there was speculation that it was going to be the unnamed personnel man in that video was Howie Roseman talking about tight ends. There's been a lot of steam on Mason Taylor to go in the first round. The uncertainty about Dallas Goedert. I think Philadelphia tight end at 6-1 certainly makes some sense to me at the end of the first round. The question is going to be, do one of these defenders like a Jihad Campbell, who have these injury concerns. We've seen the Eagles do it over and over and over again, where they're willing to take a chance on these guys that have a little bit of concern but come from a power program, and then they end up turning them into a superstar on the defensive front. Does a guy like Campbell fall? If so, the Eagles likely go that direction. But if the draft goes as a lot of these mocks are projecting, I think the Eagles are willing to take a chance on Mason Taylor at 6-1. Birdie is in the live chat somewhere here. We finally made it. Good luck tonight with all your bets. The credit on this one goes to him. Washington running back. It's still 7-1. I know we've talked about it at 10 and 11-1. Worth a long shot flyer if you want to go that direction. Another one I saw from TA this morning that I think makes sense. Buffalo running back 22-1 as their choice with their first pick. Lots of ties to defensive line, lots of ties to safety. But as you get to the end of the first round, perhaps a guy like Henderson in uncertain times with James Cook and how that scenario is going to play out. Does he potentially get added in with his run and pass catch ability, whereas the Bills have to wait till late in the second day? I know there's a lot of depth in the running back class, but it's a little bit different than some of these teams further up, where you have a selection of guys day two that really stand out. Do one of these teams, whether it be Washington or Buffalo, take a flyer on a running back at the end of the first round? Other than that, Seattle wide receiver with their first pick, something that potentially stands out. If you get a guy like Ted McMillan sliding, that is at 5-1. If you're buying into that commentary with their first pick, if McMillan or even Golden slides down because maybe there's an increased stock in both of those tight ends as it's trending towards, those guys go early. Cowboys go wide receiver at 12, and then Seattle's sitting there. If they don't elect to go with a guy like Gray Zabel on the offensive line, do they give another weapon to Sam Darnold? That could make certainly some sense to me as well if you wanted to go that direction. Not overly enticing at that price, but something that I've seen kind of get a few rumbles this morning as we head into draft day a little bit later today. Changing 500 says, what time do books typically take down draft props today? Brandon Shoemaker answers the question. BO Line pulls the plug at 4 p.m. Pacific. Assume most books would be following suit. That's what I've seen for the most of it as well, right in that 4 p.m. window range, about an hour or two before things get going live with the NFL draft. All right, that will do it for me. That'll do it for pre-draft coverage. Anything else will be posted in the Telegram. Again, you can join it in the description down below. Any useful links I'll be dropping in there for anybody who wants to follow along. Thanks to everybody who has followed this entire process leading up to the draft. I hope your bets go as well as they can tonight during the draft. Hopefully you're able to find some big wins tonight as well, and perhaps any in-play opportunities that might surface elsewhere or into day two odds we might see as well. I'll be back same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, with winners and losers of day one to wrap up draft week here on the RAS YouTube channel, as well as Apple or Spotify. Enjoy. We'll chat to you again tomorrow morning.